Greetings, Earthlings. I'm Kathy Beal of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, known as the Professional Aquarian on YouTube. Today, we are going to talk about embracing uncertainty in astrology as well as life. And before I introduce our guest, I'm going to explain a little bit about what is going on astrologically. That also makes this a perfect topic. March puts us through two eclipses. The middle of the month is a lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo, which is bringing a lot of revelations to light. People will be leaving, chapters will be closing in a very dramatic way. Some of it has to do with our relationship to government because Saturn is opposite the moon. Our relationship to the whole concept of who's responsible for what, to what extent are we responsible for ourselves. And this eclipse is the second in a series that's going to be going on for 2 years that will be resetting notions of how interconnected we are and what kind of boundaries we can put between ourselves in a healthy way or not. And while this one is playing out, the eclipse at the end of the month is very, very fiery. It is a solar eclipse. It shoots us forward. It's ending a family of eclipses that we've been through for the past 2 years in the signs of Aries and Libra that have been bringing relationships and our relationship ground rules to light for revisiting and renegotiating. These eclipses have had the impact of making us more self-determining, more self-actualizing, more inclined to do our own thing and worry less about what other people are up to. So there's kind of a weird paradox between these two eclipse families at the very moment that we're finishing up a cycle of becoming more ourselves and acting more for ourselves. We have an overlapping, emerging eclipse cycle that completely immerses us in the totality of all existence and challenges us to figure out how all of us little individuals are going to figure out how to exist with each other, which also expresses the energy at the end of the month. We have an uncommon emphasis of energy in the sign of Pisces with a whole bunch of bodies backed up at the end of the sign, just at the moment that Neptune, which rules Pisces, is leaving 14 years in the sign of Pisces and heading into Aries, which most of us alive now have never experienced. So this is like an extended goodbye party. Look at it as a time to reevaluate what the last 14 years have meant to you in terms of your spirituality, of your ability to be creative, how susceptible or not you have been to lies and manipulation around you. Maybe something about escapism and substance abuse could be a factor. But the bottom line is all of these together combine into energies that are mixing in a way and with an intensity that is uncommon for us to experience. There will be moments of aha, there'll be moments of clearing, there'll be moments of that's just it, I'm moving forward, and yet an overriding sense of we're all in this together and we have to figure out how we're going to proceed. Please do take time to step out of the noise, find your center, empty, clear, recognize what your voice sounds like, and use that to guide you as you go back in. And with that, I am very happy to invite on Alejo López, who has a fascinating story in life. He was born in Argentina, but moved to Europe at the age of 23, and he now lives in Greece. His travels led him to a quest to discover a language capable of describing people's diverse lives and inner worlds. He's a licensed psychologist with multiple degrees and diplomas. He holds a bachelor's degree in performing arts. a diploma from the Faculty of Astrological Studies, an MA in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology. And now he's in the process of becoming a certified Jungian therapist. He's on the Faculty of Astrological Studies. He serves on the board of the Astrological Association, and he is one of the founding members of Stellium magazine. And I could spend the next 15 minutes talking about what else he does. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. Yes, it sounds too much. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It's
Right.
strange
Well,
when you hear someone introducing you and telling all like you. I think we go through life and we just do things, and then when you hear somebody introducing you, you kind of realize, oh wow, look what I've done. Yes.
Well, you've crafted a one of a kind life that a lot of people don't allow themselves to explore.
Hmm.
So I'd love to hear this kind of thing. I always like to start with a new guest. The question of how did you come to astrology?
Okay, so to make the story not too long, let's say, the first I had this best friend in high school, and her aunt was always telling us stories about ghosts and exorcisms. And when I got my first job, I could finally decide what to do with my money. I was 19 or 20 years old. I could finally decide what to do with my money because my parents would not uh, pay courses on these things. And so I went to her and I told her, I want to do magic. Where do I study? And she said, stop the nonsense and go and study Kabbalah. You know, Kabbalah, yeah. So I went in this course, and there was an astrologer. And the way she spoke, the things she said, it was very moving. It was very attracting to me, the things she was saying. So one day I asked her, I told her, look, I want to learn to speak this way. I want to learn these things that you say. So she told me, okay, you have to go and sign up to this school. So I went to this school, which is the kind of famous school of astrology in Argentina. It's called Casa Once, which means the 11th house. And I signed up. I remember the course had already started, but they admitted me. They were in, I think they were going through the signs. They had just started, and I think they were already in Virgo or maybe Scorpio. I don't know, somewhere there. So kind of half the zodiac. And I signed up, and I didn't even know what really astrology was. And actually, it's quite funny because at first I was a bit disappointed that it was all psychological astrology, and I was like, no, but I came here to learn how to do magic. And it's like, what's this? Yeah, this is how it started. Yes.
And then from there, at what point did you decide this is something I would like to discuss with I'd like to do as a living? I'd like to actually consult with people, counsel them.
Yeah, this is interesting actually, because I think nowadays people have this idea you can be a professional astrologer, maybe because of Instagram and all, not only Instagram, like all the accessibility we have to information, right?
Mhm.
When I started doing it, I don't think I ever thought this could be my profession. I always thought it was going to be like a hobby, something that I do on the side, right? And I think at some point, then I moved to Europe. I started studying psychology, and it's interesting. Probably there was the seed planted already, because I started studying psychology because I wanted to be a better astrologer. So
Mhm.
probably I was already thinking about this is going to be my profession, but I didn't. It was a little bit unconscious. I wouldn't have verbalized it. I wouldn't have said like, yes, I want to be an astrologer and work for this. But it's true that I was starting to take all of the steps to become a professional astrologer. And it was at some point while I was doing the psychology degree that I was doing consultations. So when I first started in the school in Argentina, after 1 year or something, I started doing consultations. I was so confident. And then when I came to Spain and I started studying psychology, I was ashamed that I had been doing consultations and I didn't know anything. And so I came to the opposite feeling. Like I was studying psychology, I started studying at the Faculty of Astrological Studies, and I would not do sessions because I felt like I don't know enough.
Mm.
And after a while, okay, I started to do sessions for friends, family, people that they know you're like, maybe they're not friends, but they kind of know you because they're friends of your friends. And some of them were asking me like, how much do you charge? And I was feeling very uncomfortable with this. I was like, no, it's okay, just pay what you can. Then I remember at some point I made the list of books, and I was saying, just buy me a book. And I remember speaking with my sister, and she told me something like, no, come on, Alejo, you have to, this is your profession. You have to realize this is what you do. This is your profession. You have to charge for this. So I started charging, and I guess this was a turning point. And I guess the faculty also was a turning point, because I think that as I moved through, I think when I decided to go through the faculty, the faculty is it requires a lot of work to get the diploma in the faculty. And I think I was starting to think, yeah, I'm doing this investment because this is going to be my profession. I think I could start when I went to the faculty. I started to meet so many teachers, so many people who were doing astrology. I started to go to the astrological conferences. I started to be able to imagine that actually, yes, some people live out of this. This is their living. So I started to think, okay, maybe it's possible. And yeah, so it was a process. It wasn't, I think now it's interesting because now in the faculty, sometimes when we do this open day to explain how it works, some students come and ask, like, what is the professional outcome of studying this? And I'm so surprised people ask this, because when I started, but I'm not saying it's wrong. I mean, I think it's a good question to ask. But when I started studying this, I was never thinking about like what is going to. It was just about myself and developing these things that I like, these themes that I liked. Yeah.
I identify with so much of this. I think a lot of people might. Well, how did this so I'm sensing, but I'd like you to explain how this overlap of astrology and psychology, and also going from one geographical place to another, how did this land you into the concept of the liminal cosmos? And can you tell people what that is?
Of course, yes. So liminality is a concept I really like. It comes from an anthropologist called Arnold van Gennep. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this properly. And he wrote this book, Rites of Passages, in which he talks about when he studied different rites of passages, and he talks about this idea that there is a state in the rite of passage in which you are not anymore the condition you are coming from, but you're not still what you're going to become. You are in this liminal zone, and this is where liminality comes from. So my life experience has been that quite often I feel in this liminal zone. So when I was studying astrology in Argentina, they were using a lot of Jungian concepts, and I was feeling like you're not now. Now I've changed my mind, okay? But back then I was thinking you're not entitled to use this because you are not a Jungian. You haven't. Have you read Jung? Can you use this concept if you have not read Jung? And so I was feeling a little bit. They were all excited, and I was always feeling a little bit like I belong here, but I don't belong. Then when I started studying psychology so that I could incorporate this into astrology, my psychology school was actually very cognitive psychology. It was not psychoanalysis. And so I always felt like a little bit out, like this is not the way I would see this situation. So again, I was feeling like, okay, yes, I'm part of this. I'm a psychologist. I have a degree, everything. But I still don't feel I'm fully this. And then I started to realize that this experience has been repeated in my life a lot. So, for instance, from my country, Argentinians, especially in Buenos Aires, usually they're very proud to be Argentinians. And to me, it's like the place where I was born. Of course, it's not I'm ashamed, but I couldn't be proud either. I think it's okay. You're lucky to born in a place, and that's the place you're born. So again, I felt like a kind of distance, and now because I moved to Europe, when I go to Argentina, it's never very clear where I'm from, because I've been living almost half of my life outside of Argentina. So when I go to Argentina, people they don't recognize my accent. They think I'm a foreigner. But then
Uh-huh.
instead, when I'm in Europe speaking Spanish, they immediately recognize I'm from Argentina. So they put me. So I started to be in this kind of liminal zone. And then what I realized is that, of course, not everything in my life has been perfect, but I'm happy that in general, I have been able to follow my desires. Like I have been able to follow what I wanted to do most of the time. I wouldn't say always, but I think most of the times, even if I was afraid, I was able to do what I wanted to do. I'm not saying everything was okay. Sometimes maybe it would have been better if I hadn't done it. I'm not saying that everything was a success, but this put me in situations that sometimes were unclear. And I think that we have, like in our society, this idea of being consistent and being coherent, which I think it's an important value. But I think at the same time, sometimes it may not allow some creative possibilities. So you said my first degree was on performing arts, and I was very lucky to perform with a very good director in Argentina, Guillermo Cacase. And the way he approached the rehearsals was, if you're an actor, if you're an artist, you know this. There's a moment in which you're creating that you don't really know what's happening. You start with an idea of what you're going to do. He used to say, there's a moment in which the play is born, and it's the moment in which the director decides to give up the idea he had about the play and to create the play that it's coming into life. And this is the liminal space. And I discovered that I found myself very often in these kind of liminal spaces in which things are not so clear, and that the times in which I try to solve it quickly, to get out of there to a more comfortable zone, maybe the result was not so satisfying. Instead, the times that I was allowed, that I was able, because it's not easy, the times that I was able to stay in this kind of strange place that I'm not sure what's happening, I'm not sure what I identify with, I'm not sure who am I, what's the role I'm taking in this place. When I have been able to stay in this kind of more weird zone and respect that there's something that is kind of developing, and it takes time, I would say that then I felt more satisfied. Even if the things didn't go out the way I expected, it doesn't mean that there's no pain. Sometimes, we can use the example of a crisis in a couple. I think nowadays we have very, very, very little tolerance to crisis in relationships. Immediately it's not working, we give up. Of course, it's so hard. It's so hard to know. I think it's so hard to know when you're in a relationship crisis. Is this the sign that this relationship is not working and I should give up, because it's not going to work? Or is it that if I hold this crisis and instead of run away, I just stay there, something will be expanded? I think this is the key thing. It's so hard to know because, of course, you cannot stay in liminal zone forever because otherwise nothing is going to be created. So, and I think this is the hardest thing, to distinguish when it's time to move and when it's okay to hold the liminality, right? But I think a lot of people, when they come to a session where they come to do an astrological reading, they are in this zone. There is something, they're having a transit or progressions or something, or several. Usually it's not just one thing. And they are feeling like something is asking to be changed. They still don't know what's going to be the new model. They are starting to realize that the old model is not working, and it's a very scary place. It's not comfortable to stay there. And I think this is the moment in which a lot of people come to the session. So I think one of the things that is important to address in the session is this idea that there's nothing to be fixed. It's not like you have to do something. Maybe you do, but the first thing to do is to kind of embrace this liminality, embrace this uncertainty, because something is being born. And if we hurry up because we feel uncomfortable, if we push it, then we will not let it flourish. This is, I don't know if this does it make sense.
It sounds like you're absolutely describing what humanity is going through
Yes.
collectively right now, and in addition to what happens with individuals when they come to you
Hmm.
for a session. So
Yes. Yes. Totally. Yes.
totally. And your description of your experience to me sounded like a kind of Aquarian out of placeness. And then I was vacillating between Sagittarius and Pisces for the mutability and the flow part. But that was just my reaction to the story you were explaining of your own experience. Um, I don't know if that has any resonance or if I hit on anything, but just
Yes, yes, actually both, because I am Aquarius rising, but I also have very strong Jupiter. Yes.
there you go. There's the Jupiter. That would
Yes.
get it.
So
Okay.
yes, yes, both. Yes.
You know, I have Sun Mercury Cazimi in it combust
Ah,
like within less than 25 minutes apart in Aquarius. So I understand this
wow.
completely.
Because
Like
I also think that Mercury is one of the keys in liminality. So you
interesting.
have Sun Mercury, because Mercury, he is a little bit odd as a planet. Like he's very fast, but he's always changing sides. You can never really know where he's coming from. In mythology, he has his own agenda. If you think of Hermes, or if you think of Loki, also I think he's very
Mhm.
mercurial. Uh, in traditional astrology, he's the one that cannot be assigned either male or female. It depends on who's he. So he has this kind of also this kind of ambiguous liminal possibility. It's the symbol that the alchemists used for the work of the alchemy. So this idea that he was the one who would guide the alchemical process, because he was the one who could teach us how to integrate the opposites. So I think people with a strong Mercury, I think we all go through phases of liminality, of course, but I think people with a strong Mercury might also feel this sense of being a little bit of an in-between creatures that cannot be fully defined. It depends a little bit on the context, the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And I know many people who also would uh, hear this and go, "You've just nailed me. This is astonishing." So going back to what's happening collectively with this, um, there I really want to focus on. You say that you can't speed things up. Speeding things up could get you to an outcome that isn't really what you want.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, collectively, what's happening collectively? I don't know. I think we're I think we're definitely in a liminal space. We're in a threshold. I think we've been in this state for maybe since 2020. And I would say this is the end of the end, or the beginning of the beginning. I don't know. Like we're really at the moment that things are going to
Mhm,
change. And it's very hard, when you are in I have a friend who's a chemist, and he's always talking to me about this thing of liminality. And he says, in a chemical reaction, when you go into this space of liminality, you don't know. There's a moment in which you don't know what the atoms are going to do.
mhm.
So I think we're like in this kind of phase right now. We are probably giving birth to a new, I don't know if a new era or a new perspective in life, a new paradigm to think life from. And it's very unclear how this is going to be. And I think that when this happens, we tend to go for quick, easy solutions. So I think this is also what creates this huge polarization, right? Because we have on the one hand the right wing politics, who are completely evil and destroying, if you're coming from left wing, and the left wing suddenly seems like super uh, caring and compassionate, and sometimes smarter than the right wing. But then the other thing happens if you're coming from the other side, right? If you're right wing, then the left wing is trying to take advantage and all of these things, and they're so silly they don't realize the world doesn't work this way. And so I think it's so easy in this moment, that it's so scary to be so polarized, um, and to simplify the reality, so that it seems that it's easier to make a choice. Because I think the biggest problem is that, okay, first of all, like, um, it's easy to say that we should try not to polarize. But it's so hard because some people are making such disastrous decisions that will have a long-lasting impact in so many people's life. So it's hard not to feel like I cannot accept this. I have to oppose this. And I think it's, I think that's why we have civil rights, because in the past, people opposed
Mhm.
these forces, right? So it becomes so complicated because how can we, on the one hand, embrace this idea that we are in a liminal space, so we should be careful of not trying to reach a solution too quickly, or trying to think that we have found a solution too quickly. And at the same time, of course, I don't think we should be just waiting for things to happen. I think some things require a response, an action, right? But this is liminality, this sense of not being able to choose a role, right?
And that's the challenge of this month. And also, this is a really good place for us to pause for a couple of minutes for our break. So, everyone, hang on. We'll continue in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Celestial Compass. We're talking today with Alejo López about liminal existence, being in a state of uncertainty, which I think everybody can associate with right now. But I'd like to move,
Yeah.
unless there's a final thing or like an observation or a piece of advice you have about that. There are a couple of other things I want to ask you about.
Yes, I was thinking in the cut, I was thinking about the idea of hope. I think
Good.
that I read this book. Wait, I have it here because I always forget his name. Byung-Chul Han. And the book is The Spirit of Hope. And I'm really touched by it because usually when I think of hope, I think of this idea of denying reality. And actually, what he says, hope is more like a state of being in the world in which you accept reality, but then you do your best, hoping that things might change. And I think might be one of the keys, like in these times, this idea of having a way of being in the world that it's hopeful. And it doesn't mean that we are denying what's happening, but actually we're acting, we're doing things in order to try to make things better, even if it doesn't mean that everything is going to be fantastic. This is the hopeful state. And the other thing is, of course, community. I think Jupiter will soon go into Cancer, and I think he's telling us that perhaps there's going to be meaning in building communities. Like, I think it's something we have lost with the fall of religion, and then with the increase of social media. We had this idea that we are creating community, but we're so isolated. And I think it's important to build real community. Yeah.
I've certainly seen a lot of that happening already. And in 2020, when the pandemic hit and we had lockdowns pretty much globally, online communities started building,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing that actually come around again, but also having an in-person component that maybe wasn't there before. So I would agree with you on that one. Detouring slightly off of this, I have heard that you have a rather novel and innovative reaction to the role of mythology in astrology, and I would be very curious for you to talk about that.
Yeah. So this is something I'm reflecting on. Okay, I still don't have like fully. I haven't fully achieved a conclusion yet, but it's something I'm reflecting on. It has to do with probably this liminal space I'm in, that I travel a lot and I meet people from other realities, and they take me into their worlds. So this makes me reconsider my own world and my own perspective, right? So what I found is that, and I also do it, and I'm not saying it's wrong, okay, but I'm wondering. What I found is that when we speak about the planets, we usually focus a lot on Greek mythology. And there's this kind of unspoken belief, agreed belief, that Greek mythology can explain or describe, let's say, more than explain, every possible human experience or emotion. And I think this comes. I think, okay, there is a reason why we do this. Of course, the astrology we do today is in some ways coming from Hellenistic astrology. We're using planets and signs and houses and aspects, which is Hellenistic astrology. So I think there is a connection with Greek mythology, even though you could say that this, the planets and the motion of the planets was struck even before Hellenistic astrology. So there could be connections with previous mythologies. But there is this love in Europe for Greek mythology, this fascination in Europe and then in the Western world for Greek mythology, which sometimes is very useful when we do astrology. Like right now, I talked about Hermes, but I think sometimes it leaves out other possibilities. And I think perhaps we could try to work out what would happen if we can disengage a little bit from these mythologies. Because what I've noticed is that when we talk about these mythological stories to explain something from the chart, we are making a selection. We're not being really fair. And the example I used once was the example of Apollo. So we talk about the sun, and we talk about the sun as being this source of vitality and this idea of strength. And the sun, Apollo is the ruler of the oracle, not the ruler, but how do you say well, he's related to the oracle in Delphi. So this idea of foreseeing the future and the arts. And yeah, this is all Apollo. But Apollo, I'm very touched by the myth of Patroclus and Achilles. And Apollo is the one who kills Patroclus. And Patroclus, he was not a hero. He was not, like, I think it's so unfair the way he kills Patroclus. And so this god that we usually refer to as this kind of positive deity, and we relate it to the sun and all of the positive traits of the sun, I'm saying, well, if we take the whole myth, there is more than that. If you read the Iliad, the gods behave in very irresponsible ways. They really don't care about humanity. Humanity is like just their entertainment. So I wonder, do we really want, when we describe a chart, when we work with these symbols, do we really want to be referring to these deities that have been behaving this way? And are we doing it? Like when we talk of Jupiter, I think some astrologers have mentioned this. Like when we talk about Jupiter, we talk about the greater benefic and all of these things. But if we read the story of Prometheus at some point, he says, nothing good can come from Zeus. And it's Zeus that brings Pandora. It's Zeus, the one who brings Pandora into the world. So is he really the greater benefic? I mean, there's another story that we usually ignore when we want to relate to Jupiter with Zeus. We relate Jupiter with Zeus with the parts that we like and that match the Jupiter archetype. So my idea is that on the one hand, it's colonizing in the sense that we're taking Greek mythology as the mythology that can explain all human experience. And I think maybe we have other mythologies that can help us. And on the other hand, I think we're not really taking Greek mythology. We're taking the parts of Greek mythology that we like, that fit our narrative. And there's a loss, in my opinion, there. And, I think it might be interesting to see if we could address the planets as the archetypes themselves, without linking them so much to mythology. But it's something I'm working on. I'm not exactly like now when I was talking about Mercury, I also brought Hermes. So I'm still working on this. Yes.
I'll be very curious to see where this goes. Very curious. I would suggest that the less than positive aspects of a mythological figure might also show up in the astrology, because Jupiter is utterly indulgent. Just as Zeus saw something he wanted, he took it. Jupiter says to you, come on, go do it, even if it's not the wisest thing to do. So too much, people say, is Jupiter good or bad? I just say it makes more. It depends on what it's touching. So So there's a thought for you that perhaps the underbelly of the mythological figure somehow creeps in to the
Yeah.
astrology as well.
Yes, it's true. Yes, yes.
Well, thank you very much. I was curious about that. That was the first thing I heard about you that made me go, I would love to talk to this individual. um, the So two other things that I was looking through the presentations that you've done and the programs that you've done, and you presented on cinematic sunset symbolism. Can you talk
Yes.
about that?
Oh, of course, yes. I feel so flattered. It's such a nice place to be here.
Yeah,
I
tell me
feel
about
like,
yourself.
yes. So I'm Aquarius rising, so it's hard for me to feel, even though I do so many things, to be at central stage. So it's nice. It's a nice experience. Um, because I like movies so much, and I think it's not because of that, but I like movies so much, and also I've been training as a Jungian therapist. So when I watch a movie, I naturally start seeing some symbolism in this movie. And in the MA for Cultural Astronomy and Astrology, we had to research basically how humans engage with the sky. So we could do through astrology, through astronomy, through art, whatever we wanted. So at some point, I had to present for a conference in Wales, I think it was. I decided to choose 3 movies that represent the sunset, and to see if the way they are using the sunset is symbolizing something about the character's journey. So I used the movie Your Name, which is a movie. It's an anime movie from Japan. Then I used the movie Lovers of the Arctic Circle by its Spanish director Julio Medem, and then I used the movie Before Sunset by Linklater, which is part of the trilogy. So they're all about sunset, but I don't know. I don't want to spoil the movies, but yeah. So I don't want to tell you exactly what happens in the movie, but basically, in my opinion, the sunset, what happens with the sunset in the movie, is representing what's happening with the characters in the movie. So now it seems that these ideas, people are liking these ideas. So now for the AA journal, I'm writing for every edition, I'm writing an analysis of a movie from an astrological perspective. So first I did the substance, and I'm talking here about the sun and Saturn, this idea of accepting decay, what happens when you don't. And then I took Wicked, of course, and I'm talking about Chiron. And now the next one is going to be Nosferatu, and I'm going to be talking about Pluto, of course. It's vampire.
Of course.
Yes.
Oh,
I find
wonderful.
it so, because I studied theater. My first degree is on performing arts. I wasn't a fantastic actor. So that's why then I didn't follow a career as an actor. But I still like the arts, and especially performing arts. I like a lot. So to me, I need to engage. I need to use what you were asking before about how I saw myself when I started thinking of myself as a professional astrologer. And one of the things I discovered is that for me to make this a profession, I need to use it in creative ways, in a way that is not always the same, because otherwise I get bored. Yeah.
Oh, we are so similar. We may live on different continents and have wildly different charts, but we're so similar. Well, so talking about magazines, so tell us about Stellium magazine.
Stellium, yes. So basically, what happened is that I studied astrology in Argentina for 3 years. Then I moved to Spain. For a while, I didn't do any astrology, and then I started to study in the Faculty of Astrological Studies. When I started there, a whole world opened up because I connected with astrology in English, and I started discovering so many books, authors, conferences, people that I didn't know. And I was so happy. And I was feeling so sorry for friends of mine in Argentina, that I wanted them to read this, to watch this, to learn from this, and they couldn't because they didn't speak English. And I realized that in the English-speaking world, there are many astrological magazines. And in the Spanish-speaking world, there are not so many. There used to be one in Spain called MC, Medium Coeli. And in Argentina also there used to be one, now I don't remember the name, but they were not very successful in the end. And I had this idea that we should have Spanish astrological magazine, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't dare to do it. And back then I spoke with a friend, and I was telling her, yeah, that's such a shame, in Spanish we don't have any magazine. And she was like, you should do it. And I was like, no, come on, I cannot do a magazine, I'm not a writer. And she was like, yes, come on, just do it, just start doing it. And I was like, no, but I don't know how to do this and how to do that. And she was like, you just start and you will work it out. And so what I did was to call two other astrologers from Argentina that I really liked. They didn't know me, but I contacted them and I said, look, I think our approach might be interesting. I knew one of them was an editor, so I knew she had very good skills as with words. And then I contacted. Then in summer school of the faculty, I met another friend who's now also a tutor in the faculty. It's Cia Rascona, and she told me she had studied marketing and blah blah blah. And I said maybe we could also use someone who has more vision than I, because I may have vision, but I don't know how to do it. So basically, I called the four of them and I told them. And then the other one is Guadalupe. And so I told them, look, I have this idea. I don't know how to do it, but I think it could be nice. Should we do it? And they didn't know me. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So we started contacting Spanish-speaking astrologers and asking them if they would like to participate and all of these things. And that's why we call it Stellium, because from the beginning it was an idea that it was not my project. Mm-hmm. Because to me, what was very interesting was that the moment I contacted them about this, they didn't know me, but they immediately said yes. And what came up from the first meetings was that we were all having a similar thought, that there should be a magazine. So I was always saying, this is not my project. This is something that was there, like in the collective. Maybe I was the one who, kind of reached out, but it's not my project. And in fact, after 2 years, I left because I was doing so many things and I felt like I couldn't. So the magazine is still running, but I had to leave because I couldn't keep up. So it's so, at the same time, it's so nice. They were like, oh no, but how come you're leaving? You were the one who started. And I'm like, no, it's amazing to see that I'm leaving and the magazine is alive, that it wasn't. This is like, I think you will understand as Aquarius rising, it's not mine, it's not my idea. It's something that it's from all of. I think this is amazing. Yes.
And I think that's a wonderful example of the sort of development that humanity will have going on more and more. And it leads me, something I'd like to discuss is the international or the multilingual astrological community, because so much of it happens in the English language. But you're currently living in Greece. So how did I'm assuming you have Greek proficiency. How did that come about?
Yes, I don't have Greek proficiency at all. So I'm learning Greek. This idea of liminality. So I live in Athens, but to be honest, for the past I moved to Athens 3 years ago. For the past 3 years, I haven't been in Athens for more than 2 months in a row. Always something's happened, and I have to go to 2 weeks, 1 month. My family is in Argentina. I have family in the USA, and my partner is in Istanbul, in Turkey. So I'm all over. So in the end, I didn't learn Greek so much. I'm taking lessons, but I would say mostly I have Greek friends here, of course. I have done some sessions here for astrology in Greece, but in English. It was with Greeks who speak English.
Right.
And then, of course, I do a lot of Spanish and in English, of course, yes. But
so,
yeah. Yeah.
I was just curious about that because I am acquainted with a Greek astrologer who does live in Athens, and his English is phenomenal. And I was very, very fluent in another language at an earlier point in my life. I'm still pretty decent at it, but there's a completely different way of talking, and having to learn the technical terms in two different languages and switching back and forth. What is your observation about, like, how big is the astrological community that is multilingual? It's not particularly large, is it?
Ah, um, I would like in Greece. I would say most the people that I've met here that are astrologers, they all speak English. Um, and I would say Greeks in general. So I wouldn't say this is the astrological community, but Greeks in general, they know their charts very well. Like when I meet people here and I tell them I'm an astrologer, many people, they don't only know their sun and sometimes their rising sign. Quite often they know their moon, their Mars. So this was very Argentina is the same. Argentina, everybody
Really?
knows their chart. Yes.
Interesting. So it's just part of the culture
It's yes,
that
it's
you
part
know
of the
that.
culture. Yes.
And
But of course I would say that yeah, if a Greek wants to go to an astrologer, probably he will go to a Greek astrologer. I mean, not because he's discriminating me, but because he prefers to do it in his own language.
sure.
Yeah.
But with the people that you've worked with in the UK, what is the ability to actually practice astrology in more than one language something that is a
Ah,
aberration? Is it common? Um,
yeah, no, I wouldn't say it's common. No.
I wouldn't think it would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's common. No. And also it's strange now that for me, now not anymore, but at first, because in the end most of the astrology I had learned was in English. When I
Mhm.
had to do, even though it's not my mother language, when I had to do sessions in Spanish, sometimes I was feeling uncomfortable about how to describe certain things. Now it doesn't happen anymore. I learned to do the bridge more easily. Yeah, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, the terms are different. The terms are
Yes.
different. I mean, I am still fluent in German, but I would not do an astrological session in German because I I don't know. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah, yeah.
know how to
And
do it.
also because sometimes it's so subtle, right? You use the wrong word and it can be so triggering, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes it's important to make sure you're yeah, you're using the right words. For me it's a challenge to be doing now I got more used to be doing it in English, but it's a challenge. And sometimes when I have patients with whom we do therapy in English, and sometimes they use expressions that I don't know, and they have to explain what they means. And it's so interesting because for me, let's say for instance the elephant in the room, this is one that I know of course what it means, right? But let's say I don't know what it means, and they say, so imagine there was the elephant in the room and blah 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 blah, blah. So I stopped them. I'm like, what do you mean there was an elephant in the room? I'm like, no, this is an expression. It means, but I will take it symbolically. Okay, what do elephants mean for you? Why did you choose this expression now? So it's interesting that sometimes being once also one patient told me that sometimes because my English um, is not native English, the way I form some expressions sometimes, he's like, it's not that it's incorrect, but that a native speaker would never say it this way. And he says that sometimes the way I say it brings a kind of layer to what I'm saying
Mhm.
that would have been. Um, so it's interesting how this sometimes it makes the communication more difficult, and how sometimes also it opens up new narratives. Yes.
That would make sense, and I have the feeling that Jung would approve of that, that there are no coincidences, it's these things happen. Well, this has been an absolute delight. We have just a few minutes. Do you have, like, parting words, to describe what you do or sum up any kind of advice for humanity listening to you right now?
Uh, so first of all, I would say I'm not a wise man, so you don't have to follow what I say. Um, but I do think that how can I say it? When I once had to give this talk, the Astrology of Hope, that, and I'm going to be talking about this also. I don't know, is it okay if I mention something?
Oh, I want you to tell people where they can find you and what you're doing. So
Okay.
go ahead.
So I'm going to be, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be giving a talk on the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which I think it's about, for me, losing hope. It's about this kind of a disappointment, you know, Neptune with all of the dreams and Saturn taking it down. But at the same time, in alchemy, the moment in which the alchemists face the dark matter, what the alchemists used to say, this is from Claire Martin's book, which talks about astrology and alchemy, and she explains the different processes of alchemy. And there's a moment, which we call nigredo, in which we face the darkness. And for the alchemists that want to find gold, to see that what they are trying to ignite is actually going black, 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 it's very, very unsettling. And of course, it's terrifying. But the alchemists say, when you see the black matter, rejoice, because the work has started. So they say this idea that first we need to sink into this dark world. And I've been reading about mystics when they talk about grace, and grace comes upon them in the worst moment. You know, there is this idea, you know, a person who is an alcoholic, let's say, they can start healing when they give up, when they accept that they know they have no control. In this moment of despair is the moment in which they can heal. As long as they hold on to this hope that I can control my drinking, then they go to a very difficult, dark place, unhealthy place. In the moment they give up is the moment that grace comes to them and the process begins. And this is what I mean with hope, with this spirit of hope. This idea that there is a hope that has not to do with denying reality, but with kind of embracing these moments and staying in this kind of dark moment, because if there's this darkness, it means that the process has begun. Something might be alchemized.
That is, no, that is wonderful. I thank you very much. Please tell people where your website is so they can find you.
Okay, my website is liminalcosmos.com. My Instagram is also liminalcosmos. Yes.
I thank you very, very much. I could just let you go for another hour or two. I hope you'll come back another time, and it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.